Hello everybody and welcome to this next section, which is the system hacking section. Now, before we actually start hacking ourselves, let's familiarize ourselves with the Metasploit framework so that when I, for example, use certain terms, we'll understand them to mean the same thing. Now, Metasploit framework, it is basically a tool and it comes pre-installed in Kali Linux. It is used for exploitation most of the time. Sometimes you can use it for scanning. Now there are some of the modules and payloads and ops and all the other stuff that we will talk about that come already with the Metasploit framework. But before we begin actually using them, let's try to actually make them understandable, and after that we will execute our first exploit. So, as I said, Metasploit framework tool for developing and executing code against a remote target machine. Basically, for the Metasploit you actually have the MSF payload creator, which is the MSF Venom. We have the Metasploit framework, which is the tool that we will use. You can start it up with a simple command called MSF console, but don't do it yet since we have to start something else first. And there is also something called Armitage, which is basically a graphical user interface for Metasploit framework. Now, the main two things that you will hear most of the time while we are in this section are exploits and payload. Now, I already believe that most of you know what those two are, but just in case, the exploit is the main actually type of the attack. For example, if we have on a target a vulnerable software running, we can take advantage of it and exploit it and run our reverse shell or rootkits on it, for example. Now I will explain what reverse shells and rootkits are, but basically the exploitation process, there is something that you should know, a term, it is called a 0 day. Now a 0 day for the exploitation is basically an exploit for a vulnerable system that hasn't been discovered previously. That's why it's called 0 days. It hasn't been fixed yet. It's still vulnerable. There are still vulnerable softwares out there. Now, those are types of the attack that you will not encounter, most likely, since discovering 0 days only happens a few times during a year. There are different types of 0 days. Some can be more dangerous than others, but the most recent one that I've heard of was the 0 day in 2017, an exploit that basically allowed anyone to access a Windows 7 machine, and I think also a Windows 8 machine, without a user clicking on anything. So you could just connect to the same network and basically exploit the Windows 7 machine if it is running a 445 open port or SMB open port. It was discovered by some hackers, I believe, it was an NSA exploit called the Eternal Blue. I'll also show it to you in the Metasploit framework later on. But that is the basic meaning behind the 0 day attack. Now, we will not be discovering 0 days attack because most of those attacks, if even discovered, can be costly can cost from above $100,000. So if you were to, for example, discover a 0 day, you can sell it for $100,000 and more. I believe for the iPhone, if you were to find for the iPhone a 0 day, you would get paid by Apple $1 million. But I only heard that. I'm not really sure if that's true. But we won't be really getting ourselves with that, since we will be exploiting targets with already known exploits and with our basically reverse shells that we will run on the target. So there is something called payload, which is basically the reverse shell. So that is something that after we exploit the vulnerable software, we deliver its payload. Now we can deliver to machine. We can deliver it to machine in order for it to give us access or some information back. Now we will cover all of them in detail in the next lectures. But for now on, let us actually start up the Metasploit framework and see its environment. Now I would advise you, before you actually type the MSF console, which is the command for starting up the Metasploit framework, let's run the service PostgreSQL start. So service PostgreSQL start. This will make your Metasploit run faster since it is using the database. Now you do not need to do this if you don't want to, but as I said, it will only make your Metasploit run faster. So Now that we run this, we can finally open our Metasploit framework. In order to do that, you just need to type here MSF console, click enter, and wait for this to open. Now, since this is a virtual machine, this might take a few seconds to open depending on your PC speed. And once it does, we will actually cover some of the basic commands that you will use in order to navigate into the Metasploit framework. So let us wait for this to open first of all. So here it is. The first thing you notice is this banner right here. I believe it is every time different or something like that. The next thing you see is the available things on the Metasploit framework currently at this time, which is the 3rd or 11th of March 2019. We have 1,854 available exploits. We have 1,049 auxiliary modules, post-exploitation modules 325, 546 payloads, 44 encoders, 10 knobs, 2 evasion. Now we will cover what all of these are in the next lecture, but for now on, let us actually see how we can navigate through this framework. Now, as we can see, our command line is right here, MSF5 and then this arrow, and here we type our commands. So the first logical thing that we should do is type help. Now, help will give us the available commands that we can run right now. So we can see some of the useful ones would be use command. You will use it a lot. It's basically you just type here use and then the name of the actual exploit that you want to use. So here it is, selects a module by name. But in order for you to select the module, you need to know its name. So since we are beginners, we do not know the name of any module. So we can also use the search command in order to find out the modules. Search modules names and descriptions. If you just type here search, and let's say we want to find Windows exploit, so just type here search Windows. It will give you all of the available Windows exploits on this Metasploit framework. So let me just zoom out a little bit so we have a better look at this. So these are all of the available modules available for the Windows exploits. As we can see, for example, exploit Windows is AP, W3 who query, and you can also select that and see more details about it. Now, there are lots of them. As I said, there are over 1,800 exploits in the Metasploit framework. We will cover only a little of them, since if we were to cover all of them, we would make this course 1,000 hours long. Now, let's say we want to use, for example, I don't know, let's select random, some random exploit. Let's say this is auxiliary. Let's take this one. So, example, exploit multi-browser Java Reno. You can select it. You can also see the date that it came out, so 2011, and its performance says excellent. Now, Java Applet RetroScript Engine Remote Code Execution. So, in order to pick that exploit, we will simply just to type here use and then paste the name of the exploit itself and just press here enter, and you will see that you type the correct name for the exploit once there is red letters in this bracket, so it means this exploit exists. Now this selected exploit, we can see its options with the show command. So show options will give us all of the options for this exploit and what it requires in order to run. So we can see module options, exploit multi-browser Java Reno, and then we can see server host 0.0.0. This is a required field, so you need to specify this if it is not specified. Description for that field, the local host to listen on. This must be an address on the local machine or 0.0.0.0. Now, server port is 8080, current setting. It is also a required field, the local port to listen on, and other things such as SSL certificate, and URI path are not required. As we can see, they're all under no. You do not need to specify them in order to run this attack. Now, down here we have the exploit target. So in order to check out your available targets, you can just type here show targets, and it will print out a list of all of the targets available for this exploit. So we can see this exploit we can run generic Java payload, Windows Universal, Apple OS X and Linux x86, so basically it can run on any platform. Now, in order to, for example, if you didn't know much about this exploit, you would want to find out more about it. You can do that with show info option, so this will print out what exactly is this exploit. So you just type here show info. Let's scroll up to the beginning. It will say name, module, platform. It will basically give us the output of this command before. So available targets, check supported, no. It doesn't have an auxiliary module that it will check if this exploit exists. Basic options are also something that we saw with the previous commands. Payload information and description. Now description is most likely something that you will search with this command. So this module exploits a vulnerability in the Reno script engine that can be used by Java applet to run arbitrary Java code outside of the sandbox. The vulnerability affects version 7 and version 6, update 27 and earlier, and should work on any browser that supports Java, for example Firefox, Google Chrome, and so on. You can see some of the other references right here, so if you were to copy this link, let's copy the first link, let's see, open link, not really sure if it works like that, so open link, it's ready, and it will lead you to a page where you can, for example, read more about this payload, about this exploit. So as soon as this loads, you will be able to, I believe it is a Rapid7 website, not really sure where it is taking us, but it should take us to a page where this exploit is in greater details. So vulnerability type, we can see that its score is 10.0, so this is a very serious exploit right here. And basically, let's not just bother ourselves with all of these options right here. You can read it if you want to. You can also try to visit other sites as well that also explain this exploit in greater detail, but we will not be doing that at the moment. Now, if you want to deliver, for example, a payload with this exploit, you would see your available payloads with show payload options. Show payloads, I believe it's spelled like that, so show payloads will give you your available payloads for this exploit. So for example, you cannot use a reverse TCP Windows exploit payload in here, since it is not specified in show payloads options. You can only use all of these other options available, or payloads available. In order, once you check out all of these payloads and once you choose one, in order to set it, you will have to type here set and then payload and then space, and then you basically just copy any payload you want. So let's copy this one or the payload that you chose, and you set that payload. As we can see, we successfully set the payload with this command. If you were to mistype it, it would say no such payload available. Now after you select payload, you want to type show options once again, and you will see that we also have some of the additional options for our payload. Now, most of the time you will see these two options. One of them is lhost and one of them is lport. Now the lhost is basically, as it says right here, the listen address, so it is basically your Kali Linux machine, since you are listening for the connection back from the target machine. The lport is the listening port on which you are listening, which is most likely by default on Metasploit it is 4444. So in order to run this, you would set lhost 192.168, or let me just first check out my IP address, which is .1.7, and you would set lhost 192.168.1.7. Show options. And now we can see everything is set, and now you would be able to run this payload or exploit against your target if you find a vulnerable one. Now, I will not be running this exploit since I don't really have a vulnerable target, but I just wanted to show you some of the commands that you will use in order to select your exploits. And we will actually exploit and run some scanners in the next sections, right after we actually cover the basic structure of the Metasploit framework itself. I will explain what NOPs, encoders, payloads, exploits, post-exploitation tools are in the next video. But before I finish this one, You might have noticed that I actually type here ifconfig. Let me just type it once again since I forgot G. If it were to give me my command toolback, so ifconfig, and it actually outputted me my ifconfig command. So you notice that you can actually run the system commands from this command tool. So you can run all of the commands that you can run from a simple terminal in the Metasploit framework command line. So you can also run nmap or netstat -nr. You can also run anything from this command tool as well. So you do not need to call Metasploit while performing the attack or any other scan that you want to perform. So that would be about it for this introductory video. Now you might still be wondering about some of the things. Don't worry, we will also cover them in greater detail in future videos. Right now I just wanted to show you the simple environment of the Metasploit framework itself and some of the more important commands that you will be using. So I will explain the modules that we have in Metasploit framework in the next lecture, and I hope you're there. Bye.